Okay, you guys are ready to begin.
Thank you.
Well,
Jerry, just a quick question before we get into everything. Is staff going to be able to report to the board on the 26th of the recommendations, or do you need more time?
No, we were preparing for the meeting, the first meeting in November, whenever that date is. I can't remember. On
Okay,
on the 26th, we still have some residual, Dan, from the previous meeting that we need to try to get through as far as
Okay.
work session and stuff.
All right, cool. Can we get a motion to commence the October Budget Advisory Committee meeting? Second,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Pardon me. So as an update, we have a confirmed slot for the board fair for this Thursday at 7:30. So I'll jump on that, and I think, Len, you had indicated that you might be able to hop on that as well.
Yeah. What time is the debate? So, I guess I'd rather do that than watch the debate, maybe.
Wow.
I think most people would want to watch you the debate.
Oh, God.
Oh, now I understand what's happening. So Len, you're coming up because I guess I forwarded you the invite as me. So when you were sharing your screen,
Yeah,
it was coming
That's
up
what
to my
happens.
screen.
we each have
Gotcha.
a personal invitation, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I apologize. I missed your email from last Friday. So I'm saying, do we have a meeting Monday? Is that really correct?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. I'm sorry for missing that.
No,
Charles,
no,
I can't join you on Thursday because the board will be in a meeting at that time.
got it. I guess with that, so there'll be an invitation circulated, and if anybody else wants to join, I imagine that would work well.
Yeah.
But in the event that you can't join, do you guys want to kind of weigh in on, I guess, a few things? One, as a starting point, we have a couple of spots that are expiring this year, but I think in particular, John Fall is up in December and had, indicated to me that, it was going to continue to be difficult for him. He was going to try, but was more than comfortable with us filling his position in the meantime. And now that his position is, coming to a conclusion, it seems like it would make sense to try to fill that spot. I just wanted to put it out there to everybody that everybody's in agreement with that. He was fine with that at the time.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
guys are all cool with that. Now the challenge being to find somebody. So we'll see how it goes, and if we're lucky, we'll find somebody through this on Thursday, and then if not, we can continue the search in addition to that. I guess another question would be, is there anybody who anticipates not wanting to continue with the committee? You guys are all planning on continuing?
Who else is up?
Bill's up. Bill
Yes,
was up at December 2020, it says.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Your term expires in December of this year.
Right.
Have you been on the committee for 3 years or for more than 3 years?
I can't answer for sure.
Why don't we ask it a different way? Bill,
Yeah.
if you're eligible to reappoint, do you want to stay on the committee?
Yes,
Excellent. Good.
Oh, Charles, I mentioned, Charles, that I could attend Thursday, but setting the debate aside, I'm on the Community Resource Center board, and we have a meeting also Thursday night, so I'm sorry, I won't be able to join you or Dan for Thursday night.
Oh, no problem. I haven't done one of these. I don't know how it works. Dan, Natchez, do you mind just maybe walking me through briefly, and then people can weigh in, depending on the framework and the platform, do people just join onto in this environment
Well,
onto a Zoom call?
This is gonna be new. You're talking about the fair, correct? Charles?
Correct.
This is gonna be new because we've never done it before, like anything else. But what's happened in the past, when it was live, there was a desk and everybody walked around and talked to people behind the desk of, whatever the committee was. So for the Zoom, you should be able to, somebody should be able to tell you if people are joining, or you can actually look and see if there are additional, look at the thing that says participants.
Mhm. Yeah.
Or there should be something else that says participants includes visitors, correct, Jerry?
Yes.
So.
No, so attendees, so Dan, it's participants, which would be someone like you or me, and then there would be attendees. And the
Okay, so,
attendees can be brought up to, to speak.
yeah, Joe, do you know where attendees would be on the,
Yeah, so panelists are like, us who participate in the meeting the entire time. You have
no,
the-
how do you find it on the, how can Charles find it on his screen?
So if you go to the bottom of the screen, like where all the options are it's actually right next to share screen. You'll see participants icon. It's like two little people. It should have a number 9 next to it because there's 9 people.
Yep, got it.
If you click that, you'll have 2 tabs, a panelist tab, which is, us, and then an attendee, anybody who joins using the public link.
Mhm.
So if there are people from the, that are attendees,
Yep.
unless you get a huge number at what, over time, you can, talk to them directly.
Yep.
And try and give them some idea of what the mission of the budget committee is. I would go through some of the things that you guys have done, including, the capital budget, and coming up with a plan of, for the board of how to actually do capital budgeting, which prior to this year has really never been done, and prior to Jerry coming has never been done, except in probably the most way out theory of life. You could go through some of the projects that, are on the, welcome, John. The projects that are currently, being undertaken, including, Ellen's spreadsheet that she just came up with. And Ellen, I don't know if you're going to be on, on there Thursday night, but then you could share that,
Sure, if I can.
type of
I'm
thing.
not
But
sure
just,
if I can join it, but if I can, I will.
okay, but trying to, get a handle on, well, what's the program cost? What are the revenues? Not to necessarily get rid of anything, but to help evaluate the effectiveness in, what resources should be allocated to different programs. And whether we should, try and find other programs to replace other programs. That's not our job. That's our job is to recommend them. It's the, whatever other group is in charge to decide whether they want to do that or not. So it's basically to get a handle on money and better allocate our resources to get the best bang for the buck, and be fiscally prudent.
Well, that's great. And we all collaborated and, helped formulate a mission statement. So we can go through some of those bullets, and then maybe talk a little bit about the subcommittees that we have, and, where we might be looking for some participation by the subcommittees. So it's sounding like, particularly with this format, that there aren't going to be other committees and that there could be multiple attendees on at the same time, and it's going to be, more of a, open collaborative venue, if you will.
Yeah.
Which is cool. All right, great. So, and I see is that, so John Campbell, you just hopped on as well. And just to, recap, we were going through, which is pulled up on my screen, who is currently comprising the committee, when the positions are expiring. We talked about that, we're going to look to replace John Fall with somebody, and that this fair would hopefully be a forum for that, and wanted to confirm that you were still planning on participating. We kind of went around the horn. It looks like everybody's planning on continuing. Would you be planning on continuing as well?
Yes.
Great. So that leaves really just one spot to fill. And if anybody knows anybody that's interested, if you could pass that along, that'd be great. We'll see how Thursday goes. Any other topics for Thursday that you'd like me to use as an example, or subcommittees that we're envisioning that we really don't have, that we might want to fill, that we could at least throw out there? I think we have our hands full with a lot of topics right now. I could focus on what we have on our plate. But if anybody has anything else they want to throw out there.
I think, Charles, one of the things you might want to do is, if people are actually interested, to ask them what they're interested in, what types of things they would like to be involved in, and try and get a dialogue going. I think that, is probably the most effective way of attracting people.
Great point. Obviously, we always want to stay sensitive to diversity. So we'll keep that in mind as well. All right, cool. Did anyone have anything else with that? Cool. I'll keep you guys posted. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's attended, and we'll keep the search going if not. So item 2 was just to recap the Board of Trustees meeting that we participated in. I know a number of you were on the call. Thanks for everybody's input again on developing the document, for joining the call. I think we all felt like it went pretty well, and we're, as we started with tonight, planning on next steps with circling back. Dan, can you just kind of recap that again, what you're anticipating or Dan or Jerry, what you're anticipating the timing being, and what next steps would be?
Next steps, as Jerry's indicated, that the board asked staff to review the recommendations, and they will report back to the board at the first meeting in November. So sometime in November, I would hope that the board would act on it in one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
If staff has additional recommendations, they may come back to you for your review, et cetera. But I would suspect that things, should be moving forward sometime in November to get to completion.
Okay. All right. That's great. And by staff, is that like department heads throughout the village or select staff?
Not select, Charles, department heads.
All department heads. Cool.
Yep.
That's great. Appreciate that. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to hearing feedback and the like. And then, as we touched on during the meeting, it's such a robust topic in itself that it may very well make sense to do another one of these at some point with the board. Obviously, continuing dialogue, and then there's probably going to be opportunities with other topics that are at the table to collaborate in a similar type of way. It wasn't terribly time consuming, but I think we all got a lot out of that, and it'd be great to kind of try to keep that going forward. Did anybody have anything they wanted to add as far as takeaways or next steps? Otherwise, we'll sit tight, get the feedback, and then talk about it as a group and go from there.
Well, I have a comment. I think that you and Lynn did a yeoman's job of explaining a very complicated subject in a fairly lengthy document, in very, very simplistically and meaningfully. And my hat's off to you.
I agree.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
for
you,
your
Dan.
help as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely a team effort. A lot went into that document. I know a lot of you guys worked very hard on that, and it came together really nicely, and that's something we're all proud of. So it's great. I guess moving to revenue and expenses, and Ellen, maybe you could start. Forgive me, I didn't go through what you had distributed, and I only briefly had a chance to look at what Jerry had circulated. But Ellen, do you mind just summarizing what you had sent out, and if it's
Sure.
something we want to talk about?
So just to back up before what I sent out at our last meeting, Jerry had mentioned that perhaps I could work with Karen on what they're looking at with insurance payments or lack of payments. Karen has said that it's really more of a one-person job, so I'm not doing that. So I thought, okay, and of course I focused on one of my hot buttons. How much are we?
good, Ellen.
Did we lose her?
Yeah, she looks like she froze. Oh, no.
Alan, you're still with us? You're muted. You're muted. There you go.
Okay. So I put together a spreadsheet that I initially sent to Jerry to get his thoughts on the structure of the spreadsheet, where I listed a bunch of the events, and it was just a brain dump. I'm sure I missed over 50% of programs and events the village does, and came up with some column headings, whether it's a staff expense, how many hours, is it overtime? Do we get any revenue? If so, how much, et cetera, et cetera. And Jerry sent it over to Jason Pinto of the rec department, who thought it was a good template. I told him to feel free to add any columns he thought was missing. And he's starting to work on that. I don't know where he stands for everything that the rec department runs. And he was going to reach out to the departments outside of the rec department, if it's a rec department event, to find out, is there any police expense or DPW expense, et cetera. So I'm hoping to have a full front to back view at the end of the day of everything we do from an event program perspective. So as we're bringing stuff back into the budget going forward, we'll know exactly what we're bringing in.
Appreciate it.
Good, that was good.
And then turning to the documents that Jerry had distributed, I can pull those up. Jerry, do you want to go through these and point out some things in particular?
Sure. 1 second. Okay, so the expense control report will demonstrate, if you go to page 2, I'll just use one item as an example. So we'll go to 3 or 4 items down, printing, we'll go to postage. A 1010-0404. So it's $200 is what was, so this is just to follow through, so you can follow through how how we read our little report. The year-to-date adjusted budget, whether it went up or down, is the second column. The third column, is what we've expended. Fourth column is unexpended, right? If anything's encumbered, it would be in the fifth column. So the available balance is in the sixth column, and then percent balance. So we have 48.5% in that item left. And so that's how you read this, this document. You can go through each and every budget line. Every single line is there. And you can see where we are with our expenses in
Wait.
each department broken down.
Jerry, that percent column, is that backwards?
Yeah, so it's
Because
the percent, right?
Percent spent.
It's the percent spent, not left. Okay.
Yeah, spent, sorry, correct. Uh-huh.
Is there a way, Augie did the revenues on an Excel spreadsheet. Can this be exported to Excel also?
Maybe, it probably could. We use this. We use this to monitor the expenses, to make sure that there's, you know, no red flags popping up. And we don't really have a need for the Excel, but I think that Augie can convert it to an Excel spreadsheet, and that would be fine.
Well, the reason why I was saying that is you could put in rules for highlighting,
Yeah, that's true.
so you don't have to think as much.
Yeah. Yeah, and we take this somewhat broad, because what we do is we look at what the total amount, so contract, so if you look at that, the first highlighted, I'm sorry, the second bold, where you'll see contractual expenses,
Yep.
right? So it's 57%. So it means we've used quite a bit as far as that line item. So we got to keep an eye on it.
Right, but the chunk looks like it was in contract services, so probably a one-time payment for something.
Correct. That's exactly right. Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So you take a look at it, then you look up for, so we do a quick read on this. We don't really dive too deep into it. You know, if you look at personnel, which is spelled, you know, they use personal services, but it's actually personnel services. We're at 25%, which is, we're supposed to be right around between 25 and 30%.
Would it,
Go ahead.
would it be helpful to trend this based on the month in the fiscal that you're in? So obviously not all of the expenses are going to be linear, but a lot of them would be, and you'd be able to see if you're trending.
Yeah. So when you look at it in December, you should be at 50% logically for most items. But, you know, when you have something, that's exceeded that, there's usually a reason. So for instance, a lot of our beach and recreation is during the summer, June, July, August. So a lot of that is, you know, expended during those times. So you'll see later on down when you go into the recreation lines that there's significant amount that has been spent, but obviously we're not going to spend anything else because we go into the winter and then the early fall before we get into our new budget.
And what's the process with the adjusted budget with allocating? Is it generally going to be moving across lines?
The adjusted budget? Yeah, so for instance, I'll give you an example. In the harbor master's office, we had our harbor master went out for a period of time to get better from an illness. And so I had to bring in an interim harbor master. So I had to go to the board and ask for an adjustment to that budget to increase that line in order to manage the salaries. Obviously, our full-time employee continues to get paid full-time while he's sick. And then I needed to bring in a part-time interim harbor master. So I needed an adjustment or an increase out of either fund balance or contingency in order to manage that department. And so that would be an adjusted item.
I mean, if this is in Excel, which I'm sure it is in some capacity, it's going to give
Yeah.
you guys the ability to annualize and
That's-
trend and then be able to take variances. But that's just one of the things that jumps out at me is that we're not seeing like a trended variance that the eye can go to see where you're off year to date.
Yeah, this doesn't give you that. No, this doesn't give you that. This is our quick read to take a look at items and see what's left. But, obviously we distribute this to the department heads to make sure that they have a quick read on their department as they need things or anticipate purchasing other items throughout the the coming months, the next 7 months.
Gotcha.
So that's this report. Revenue is a little bit more critical, in my opinion.
I don't know who, if anyone, has had a chance to really analyze this, but is there anything that you wanted to kind of alert us to as to budget adjustments and what it's trending overall?
No, we've had very few of, I have very few concerns at this stage, Charles, with that. So we're doing pretty well regarding that. It's the revenue that I'm concerned about. As far as the expenses, we've been managing it. If the budget committee doesn't know, we created a years of service incentive program. So we have 3 retirees this year, all 6-figure plus salaries that will be leaving on December 1st or before. And they're retiring. So we will have some breakage from their salary, from their high salaries, even after the incentive program, even after their payment from the incentive program. So we're managing our personnel costs really well because we're not hiring the next day after someone leaves us. We're waiting several months. We're trying to potentially look at the department, rework it, and then see if we can't benefit from, just having our current staff continue to manage the department. That's what I plan on doing with the recreation department once Barry leaves. Barry will be leaving on December 1st, and I probably won't bring in a new department head until early March or mid-March, just because the winter is the winter and our current staff know what to do. Plus I can provide some basic guidance as a former county parks director. I can provide some basic guidance for them if they need it without too much effort. So I look to try to save pennies as much as I can by stretching out the responsibilities or delegating the responsibilities to the current staff while trying to benefit from the fact that the high salaried employees are no longer collecting their pay.
Mm-hmm. Did anybody have anything that they wanted to talk about on the expense side for the time being? We could, obviously further digest and always circle back. Do this on
Dive into it. I can certainly get you an Excel spreadsheet of this, and then you can, play with it.
That would be great.
That would be helpful.
Sure. See those celebrations right there at 7550, right at the top of page 24 that Charles has on the screen right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. So those they may not be all of them, Ellen, because that's just the celebrations apart from our recreation programs as well as our arts programs.
Correct.
So you'll have to, I want to make sure that list is complete. I know Jason will provide it.
Yeah, this doesn't have the St. Patrick's Day parade.
Right.
It doesn't have, as you just mentioned, the concerts in the park.
Yep. It doesn't have that kind of detail. And we really don't have, so the St. Patrick's Day parade is really not considered something that we run through the village. You know how it's run.
But
But
do we incur
costs.
any do we incur any expenses for it?
Sure, sure we do. We have expenses, so we have to demonstrate that in the report,
Yep.
and that'll be good to be able to, because we've never done that before, obviously. No, they wouldn't even think of doing something like that.
So I just think it's good that we know where our money's going.
Yeah, I think so too.
And the engineer is still being consulted out, third party, if you will,
Yeah.
rather than hiring an engineer.
With a very short leash. I'm the guy who holds that leash. So I
Gotcha.
pretty much run the engineer's office, and I just bring in the consulting engineer whenever we need to. As of right now, so for instance, now during this past meeting that we had, whenever it was, every day is the same, but whenever we had the last meeting, the board and I had a discussion regarding some inspection of our sewer lines. That is really not an option. It's a consent order that we have that we need to fulfill. So I've been managing those quotes and making sure that the vendor that we hire will do the right job. That's typically what the engineer will do, but I won't pay the engineer to do that because I have experience in that, so I'll take care of that myself. And start to work towards completing all of the items on the consent order that everyone on this board knows about for the sewer lines.
Well, that's appreciated. It sounds like you're going above and beyond with that, and that's not easy stuff. So appreciate it.
Yeah, it's it definitely can be complicated if you don't have experience in it. That's for sure. But it seems like it could really work out. So I'm happy about that.
Was that sewer line issue, Jerry? Was that a major capital expenditure?
Yeah. So the investigation part, Len, we've probably spent every bit of $1 million doing inspections and providing reports. This final phase is 150. Well, it was 170,000. I got him down to 150,000 because Trustee Natchez says try to get him down a little. So I got him down a little, and we reworked the quote. So this will be the final phase of the inspection, and then we probably have 4 to 7 million in actual construction and repair costs associated with these reports.
And under the consent order, do you have a date certain by which it's supposed to be done, or?
January 2022.
Oh, okay.
So we have to get moving. We won't hit that date, but
Yeah.
we will be in construction during that date. So what we'll do is we'll, ask for a little forgiveness and keep going. Consideration, I should say.
Yeah.
I slipped. I said forgiveness. I don't. Nobody. They don't give out forgiveness. They give you some consideration, but no forgiveness there.
Hey, all right, good.
That's right. Yeah. So the engineer will save on that. We have had a couple of layoffs. We've had about 5, mostly part-timers, and a lot of that is due to the fact that the employees, they just couldn't come back. Even when we reopened our offices and started doing some of our work, we asked them to come back, and they couldn't come back because of childcare and other issues. So we haven't really been too anxious at filling those positions. And we're just working, we're working with current staff to try to make up for that work. But this is a typical report that we can get at any time, just like I asked Laura for today. You can go through it if you want, and then I'll get Augie and Laura to give you an Excel, and you can start to play with the expenses. I think we probably should focus on some of the revenue issues.
Pull that up.
that are present.
Do you want me to go to the Excel or the
Yeah.
revenue control report?
The Excel in the first tab in the Excel spreadsheet. The totals tab. Yeah. Right, so our next distribution, for the first yellow line there, our first distribution for sales tax for this year, July, August, September, will be received on November 15, maybe a couple of days sooner, between the 9th and the 15th. That's when we get that. Last year, we were positive 700 and change, based on that 1% increase that took effect in August of 2019. So we did better. What's in that 33.7 million number is the June sales tax receivables. So from April, May, and June, pandemic months, we still realized an increase over what we thought we would have collected. So we anticipate that we will at least hit the 3.2 million that we forecast. Because what we're getting is we're getting a lot of online sales and we're collecting all that revenue. While people aren't physically going out shopping, they're still shopping. There was a hit for the restaurants, but then in July that really turned around. And now the restaurants are in fact asking us to figure out how they can expand outside, which is a separate issue altogether. Building department fees, they're miscellaneous fees. They're just like pool permits, things like that. Although pools seem to be a hot item, the miscellaneous fees are really down. Not really sure. It's not a big number, so I'm not too concerned about it. But it could potentially be, something that doesn't really rebound for whatever reason.
But Jerry, why did we budget 12,000 more than last year?
I think it was because that when the building department, anticipated having more of the home improvement type things going on when we put this together. So that could be it. I'll get a better answer for you, but I think if I recall, it was because of the home improvement, new bathrooms, new kitchens, those kinds of things.
And
We
again,
anticipated.
this real property tax at 100% to me is just remarkable. That
Yep.
Oh,
we
yeah.
literally collected every penny, that nobody has fallen behind on their taxes in this environment.
No one has fallen behind, and combined, it's 99.82.
8-2, yeah.
Yeah, 99.82. So it's going pretty well. Police traffic detail. So we can go to the other sheet and see what the police traffic detail, not my other sheet, but the expense report, to see what we've spent in overtime. But a lot of the overtime that's going to be skewed, because a lot of the overtime has been because we've been down an officer for most of the year. And just recently did the Board of Trustees hire some police officers.
That's a plural? How many,
Two. So we have one retiring at the end of this month
yeah,
and one that was budgeted since June, Len.
okay.
So in order to not continue to take the hit on the overtime, I believe the chief, wanted to make the argument that if we bring in a police officer at a starting salary of around 60,000, That could save us a lot of overtime. Because it seems like a lot of the high-end police officers, the high-salary police officers, the ones that are always available for overtime, for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
So it could cost a few bucks. I wish I had my budget book. I'm home, so I don't have my budget book, but I would have gone right to the number. I apologize for that.
This 8 million here, I don't know if you can see my screen, the 8
Yeah.
million.
Mm-hmm. Services. All right, personnel, right in there. You're in that zone. Overtime. 555,
Mm-hmm.
right? You see it?
Yep.
So we spent 144.
And that's for a little over 25% of the year, right?
We're a little bit more than that actually, because
Yeah.
25% would have been the end of August. So
Oh,
we're in the 32% range, probably 32%. So we're doing okay on overtime, but a lot of that overtime was not linked to outside detail. So if you go to the totals tab,
What do you mean not linked to outside details, Jerry?
so Bill, when a construction company wants to dig a hole in the street, and we determine that we need a police officer on the job or that they ask for a police officer, we bill them out. It used to be $110 an hour for that police officer. Now it's $125 an hour. And that's a reimbursable, we book that as revenue. Without a lot of construction jobs going on during the pandemic, well, the summer months, the early spring and summer months, we didn't have a lot of construction. There's a lot going on now. If you drive around our community, Con Ed is all over the place, ripping up everything. So that might tick up a little bit, but that's one of those things that's associated with an expense. The big concern is, the big concern is that's the big concern right there. That plus the court revenue are my three biggest concerns. Commuter parking, non-resident and resident commuter parking. We've given more refunds than we've actually sold. So that's a tough hit.
Understandably, though.
Mm-hmm. That's understandable. Exactly right. So what we're doing is we're discussing, I'm going to discuss, and I don't know if I've mentioned it to any board members, probably not, but I'm going to discuss taking some of the commuter parking lots and making them general overnight parking lots, or at least designating those parking lots for a period of time, maybe the next few years, so that we could potentially increase the number of general parking overnight that we sell, and use those parking lots for people who are at home but have no space for their car in their their driveway or in front of their home. So we want to open up our commuter lots to general overnight parking to see if that maybe ticks up that parking permit a little bit. Because you can see the general overnight parking, we're doing pretty well. That's that 81.91 at the bottom of the screen. So we're doing pretty good with that. And if I can convert those commuter lots, or at least a portion of the commuter lot, into a general parking lot, I think we might be able to salvage a little bit of revenue. Not a lot, but a little bit.
Also, I mean, some companies where they've either closed the office or had very, very reduced staff are targeting for reopening on Jan 1. So we
Good.
make a little uptick.
That'll help. Yep. That'll help. Harbor parking has been a boom. We're up, we're at 150% there. So we did well, parking at the harbor because, you know, people really used our facilities. On-street parking is only down 32% year to date.
I'm
I don't think-
surprised at that.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm surprised too when I was, you know, and that's a quarter at a time, Len, right there.
Yeah.
So we're doing not as bad as I thought.
Yeah.
And it's encouraging. So it's a little encouraging. And I'm sure, you know, as the fall and the fact that we decorated the downtown and try to increase the traffic there, I think that'll eventually do a little bit better for us. We may not hit our big 660 number, but we'll get, you know, we'll get something out of it. Let's see. Okay, so then there's some items that are zero in the recreation, culture and recreation. And that's because we collect all of those fees in the springtime. So everything associated with park and recreation fees, day camp fees, floats and moorings. Floats and moorings we collect in early spring before the new budget, before the June 1 budget actually, you know, starts off. So all that revenue is anticipated in floats and moorings down at the harbor. Let's see what else. Harbor master miscellaneous fees, that has gone up. Not really sure. I can get the detail on that, but I'm not really sure. But there's a few little pockets that have increased here and there, as you can see. What else? Keep going up. Building. So zoning board fees, planning board fees, they're a little low, but they're small numbers, you know, small items. Not worried about snow removal services because that's a lump sum that we collect from the county. Transport of prisoners, same thing. We'll collect that as a lump sum. Let's see what else. Bus shelters we'll do as a lump sum. Real properties. Okay, let's go to, yeah, those down there. That's a big one for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's a direct result of the court not being open and
Yeah.
actually right now it resembles a soft opening of a restaurant or something like that, where they're just, you know, they're just trying to figure out how to proceed. I'm a little concerned about that because last year you could see we were 300,000 short on their revenue. So if you look at that all the way to the right, you can see that number.
The online app that allows you to pay online, with the court being closed, is that 37,000 all that was collected electronically, or?
No, so the 37,000 is just the month of June, Charles. There was an issue with one of the judge's reports up at the state. So they didn't book the July and August numbers. So I have to get those July and August numbers. But if you look at the June, which is in the heart or the, whatever you want to call it, the heart of the pandemic, you know, we were short, what, $50,000, $43,000 from what we were actually, we need 80,000 a month.
That's
So
right.
we were short, you know, more than half. If that continued on in July and August, we may have some issues there.
So do most people typically pay these through the court directly?
They'll pay online They'll
Mhm.
pay online, but if they don't have to pay, because they don't have a court date or they want to try to determine, if there was a way to get out of it, they would spend the time to try to go to court. But that's just ticket revenue. That's just parking ticket and other ticket revenue. And the reality is, it's not just the court, not because they weren't open, but it was also because during the pandemic, everyone was home. So there were less violators on the road, less violators parking, illegally, et cetera, et cetera. And for several months, I had bags on the meters because I didn't want anyone touching the meters and touching quarters where we would have to collect them. So we bagged everything. So the avenue was free
Right.
parking on the meters. Yeah.
Right.
So all that
That's
catches up to you.
So do you have like an idea of what the uncollected component is versus it just not trending with volume?
Not yet. I'm trying to get I'm trying to get Dan to give me that number, Dan Sarnoff to give me that number, uncollected as far as parking tickets and those kinds of things.
Right.
You know what I should do? I should have that for next meeting so that you all can see what the uncollected is. It's not a small number, but I want to be accurate when I present it.
That would almost be like something that could be if you were accrued for as like a receivable, and
Yeah,
there's probably a higher default, if you will, risk
Correct.
with the more time that goes by. But
that's right.
Just backing up, I'll let you finish, but one other big line item was the on-street meters. And, it clearly meant so much to get the avenue opened up for the restaurants. And,
Yeah.
Maybe just being armed with, if somebody were trying to, counter that decision with, well, we're losing all this revenue, to be able to kind of demonstrate to the point that you were speaking of, that, if there's a way to show that, there are spaces available and that the restaurants expanding onto the avenue didn't drive the delta with that. Not that anybody is questioning it, but just in the event that came up, because
So you're talking about the actual concrete blocks taking up the parking spots?
Correct.
Yeah. So I don't think that's really a factor here, because we have so many other parking spots throughout the Phillips Park Road and the tier. So I don't think that was too much of a factor.
I would also
Agreed.
say if we didn't allow the restaurants on the street, would have less street parking.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right.
It's just now, people are just now starting to feel comfortable going inside, because it's getting a little uncomfortable being outside. So, the behavior will change a little bit. All summer long, they loved it outside.
Actually, that was actually great,
Yeah,
quite,
worked out good.
quite frankly.
It worked
And,
out really good.
I know, just going down the avenue myself, could find a parking space and eat. And like you say, Phillips Park Road I was surprised. I mean, it's very empty generally.
Very empty.
Yeah, very empty generally.
It's my preferred parking area.
Yeah.
I don't like going up and down the avenue looking for a spot. I just go to Phillips Park and then I walk up.
Yeah.
Much easier. So that's about it. There's a couple of items there. The committee can take a look at them. CHIPS program, I'm not too concerned about the CHIPS program. The CHIPS is the highway improvement funds. We get $237,000 every year. If we don't do any highway improvements, if we don't do any paving or any sidewalks, then we bank that money and we just accumulate it. So I'm not too concerned about that. Revenue sharing.
Is that state money, Jerry, the CHIPS program?
Yeah, it's the state money. Yep.
Is there anything from their budget situation that puts that or anything else at risk?
But potentially only the state aid that we receive, which is about $150,000, Len.
Yeah,
we could realize a 20% cut because that's what they've been talking about.
yeah.
So, you know,
All right. So,
we'd get 30,000, we'd have a $30,000 hit. So the state aid for villages, big, small villages, whatever you want to, is not as critical as for the cities. So I know that the city of Rye receives in excess of $2 million.
yeah,
A 20% cut for them is going to be a whole.
yeah.
So it's a little different for us than it is for the cities and how much they really need. I couldn't even imagine Mount Vernon and Yonkers, the hit that they're going to take.
Yeah.
So Jerry, are these the totals at the bottom? Is that the grand total of everything on this spreadsheet?
Yep, that's the grand total of everything. So when you go to the, Charles, if you go to the accounts tab on my, so these are all, right? So out of the 6.3, what's that number? 6.354 million.
Yep,
right? We only collected 267,000.
lovely.
Right? Right. So there's an alarm going off,
Yeah.
but the reality is some of that money, so, you know, we don't have the sales distribution. So what we'll do is we'll update this every meeting and I'll be able to demonstrate, you know, the increases, what's come in. And hope, and in the, you know, that 267 obviously will increase. But if you look at the other side of the two gray lines, the light gray and the dark gray line, you can see where we were. Our original budget was 6.597. We adjusted it to 6.797. So we added 200,000. And we brought in 6.342. That is with the final 3 months of last year in a pandemic. So we didn't do too bad considering.
Yeah. The only thing I'd like to ask Jerry is if you could put the revenue receipts on the other spreadsheet as of a particular date. So in other words, that revenue receipts column M is, I guess, as of the current date or something like it, last Friday. I thought I saw the report was run 10/16 or,
10, it was 10/19. It was today, Len.
oh, it was today.
Both reports are from today. I had fresh right out of the oven reports today.
Oh, that's what you said, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the number is as of today.
The number is as of today. There are things that lag behind because, for instance, you know, the issue with the court revenue, the issue with the court revenue is
Sure.
I kept asking staff, where's my July and August numbers? Where's my July and August numbers? It's already in the middle of October. And when we started making some phone calls, we realized that there was just a couple of minor discrepancies that they rejected the judge's submission, so they wouldn't complete the process. So he's done that now, and we'll get those numbers, you know, shortly.
Okay.
Great. This will be a great exercise to do, you know, over the next couple of months. It's something that we had on our, you know, annual schedule to stay with
Yeah.
over the next couple of months, and then that can lead up to, you know, as we go into the winter with next steps. So that's great.
I think by our next meeting, Charles, I'll have the sales tax distribution, so that'll give us a little bit of an idea.
Great.
See, you
Well,
know,
our next meeting will be beginning of November, Jerry.
so it may, Ed, we may just grab it. We may just grab it. It's somewhere in the, you know, after the 5th, after the 7th of November. So we'll
Okay.
see. Yeah. I hope to have it. And then I'll update everything else. We'll just keep working on this spreadsheet.
All right, great. That's really helpful. Did anyone have any questions or topics that they wanted to talk about with respect to this or anything else?
Nope.
Can I add, if you have any, as you're going through it in the next few days and before the next meeting, just send us questions and I'll distribute it. I love to delegate, so I'll distribute it to the staff that can answer it and we'll get you answers.
Just right off the bat, Jerry, and on the revenue sheet, some of the expenses that I have the questions I have is why we budgeted so much more revenue for this year than we received last year.
In some items, you're gonna, can you, when you identify those items, we'll have that discussion and I'll get you answers for that. Is it just one item, Ellen, or?
No, it was a few.
Yeah,
As
okay.
Charles was scrolling, a couple
Yeah.
of things jumped out at me.
Yep, sure. We'll work on that.
Like sale of equipment. We planned 36,000 last year and didn't hit it, and we planned another 36,000.
It's hard to break habits, huh?
Yeah,
That's right. We'll get there. We'll get
and
there.
the only reason why I'm mentioning it, I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily matter other than having gaps.
Yeah.
But let's not keep repeating the same
Yeah,
things.
right. If
every
we're gonna
year.
Come up with a number, let's come up with a realistic number, not a,
Exactly.
right, not a number we like, right? Plenty of numbers we like. Those flowers are nice. All right, if there's anything else, let's,
Well said. We could, if you have a motion to conclude the meeting for this month.
I'll move to adjourn.
Yep, so move. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, everyone.
thanks.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Night. Night, John boy.